Introduction to prophecy, prophets, and the prophetic. I'm going to read a excerpt from a book called You All May Prophesy by Steve Thompson. This is an example of what a prophetic encounter might sound or look like. While praying for a husband and wife, Matt received a prophetic word for them and began telling them things he could not have known naturally. He told the woman that she had 3 children, but that her oldest, a son, had gone away. He then said to her, "Your oldest has gone away, but the Lord wants you to know that his heart is in the hands of the Lord." They did have 3 children, and the oldest was indeed a son. However, the previous year he had drowned while swimming off the Mediterranean coast. He had drifted from the Lord in the years prior to his death and had been estranged from his parents as well. Okay, for those of you who don't know too much about the subject of prophecy, we're going to do a brief crash course on the subject. The Hebrew translation literally means an interpreter or spokesperson, and the Greek translation of prophecy means to speak forth by divine inspiration, and prophecy means prediction or proclamation. Prophecy is not spiritual fortune telling or card reading. It simply means to speak what God is saying now. Prophecy is speaking in order to strengthen, encourage, and comfort others. As you can imagine, the boy's parents from the excerpt we just read were very troubled in not knowing their son's standings with the Lord and whether or not he had received salvation. Through this encounter, his parents were comforted and reassured that their son would be in heaven, and they were also able to witness God's love for them. The Bible says, "He who prophesies speaks edification, exhortation, and comfort to men." That's 1 Corinthians 14:3. Prophecy is a spiritual gift, and some of the other prophetic spiritual gifts include a word of wisdom, a word of knowledge, discerning of spirits, and as we mentioned earlier, prophecy. I'll get in a little bit more to what those mean. A word of knowledge is a specific fact about a person, place, or event that was not obtained through natural means. A word of wisdom is a divine revelation of will, plan, or purpose of God for a specific situation. These are often directional in nature because they contain prophetic insight on what should be done in a certain situation. The discerning of spirits is the ability to recognize and distinguish between spirits and anointings. This helps to identify spiritual giftings and callings. It can function like a word of knowledge and healing. Identify angelic activity, the state of someone's heart, or the specific purpose of the Lord's presence in a meeting. Okay, we're going to talk about prophecy in the Bible. In case you didn't know, a majority of the Bible is prophetically inspired. We have the 5 books of Moses, often referred to as the 5 books of law. They were given to Moses on Mount Sinai during his encounter with God. We have the 4 major prophets, which are Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Isaiah, and Daniel. And we have the 12 minor prophets, which consist of Hosea through Malachi in the Old Testament. Each of those 12 books make up the 12 minor prophets. If you want to take a look at the handout that I gave out, that further demonstrates the breakup of those prophetic books in the Bible. Speaking of the Bible, in Paul's letter to the Corinth church, he tells us to eagerly desire spiritual gifts, especially that you may prophesy. So, while we might not all be prophets, that does not mean we cannot operate in these prophetic giftings. I earnestly desire that you find out more about the subject of prophecy. What we talked about was just the tip of the iceberg, and there's so much more fascinating things you can learn in prophecy. All right, thank you.